On this super review, let's take a look at the AS10 headphones from KZ. If you've spent any time like me, kind of hanging around, especially like budget conscious audiophile online communities, well, you've probably heard of KZ as a brand. I've heard of KZ, I've heard a lot of people talk about KZ as a brand that makes these really nice budget friendly, audiophile friendly headphones. And I've never heard any of them until today. What we have here is the AS10, which from what I can tell is a brand new flagship model from KZ. Well, what makes this particular model a flagship model is that each headphone or each earphone has 5 drivers in it. Yeah, most earphones, you've got 1 driver in it. If you're lucky, you get something like the T2, which I reviewed before. Those have 2 drivers in each earphone. Well, the KZ AS10, it's got 10 drivers total, 5 drivers per earphone. And then the other thing that makes these interesting is that not just does it have 5 drivers, the 5 drivers that it uses are a balanced armature style driver. And frankly, I don't really know what that means. I just know that there's different ways of making sound, different styles of driver that you can use to produce sound, and a balanced armature is, it's a common style in really high-end in-ear monitor headphones. Well, here you got one, here you got 5 of them. No, here you got 10 balanced armature drivers in one earbud, and it's not that expensive. Okay, by standards of other KZ headphones, these are fairly expensive, but these are only like 70 bucks, okay? If you are looking at really high-end audio gear, you could be spending thousands of dollars on earphones. This is the best that KZ does, and it's only 70 bucks. So I'm gonna go ahead and unbox them, give them a listening test, and I'll let you know what I think about them, but that's not all that I have in store here, because I also have with me 2 other pairs of KZ headphones, including the KZ ZSA and the KZ ZS10. Now the ZSA, from what I can tell, is sort of an entry-level KZ headphone. It costs around like 25, 30 bucks. The ZS10 is a step up. It costs around 60 bucks. I believe it also has 10 drivers in it, just not 10 balanced armature drivers. So I'm gonna go ahead and unbox all 3 pairs of headphones, give them a listening test, and I'll let you know what do I think the differences are between them, and do I think the KZ ZS10, KZ AS10 is worth the 70 bucks. Let's check it out. So I've got the KZ AS10 here to unbox, but like I said, that's not all I've got. I've also got the KZ ZSA, and I've got the KZ ZS10. Before I get started, just a quick shout out to Lillian over at Linsole. She's the one that sent all 3 of these to me for review. If you're interested in checking them out, I do have links to Linsole down below. Let's see, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. You know, I'm gonna go ahead and start with the low end model, go with the medium model, and then end up with the AS10. So for now, I'll leave these over here and let's unbox the ZSA. All right, so what do you get in the box of the KSA? Well, this is pretty standard fare for this sort of headphone, right? With a couple of surprises. So you do get instructions and a warranty card. If that's what excites you, you get it. Don't worry about it. You get 3 sets of ear tips at 3 different sizes. It comes with the medium-sized tips pre-installed, and that comes with a set of small and large tips on the side. You of course get the 2 earbuds themselves, and you get this cable, which is a pretty nice cable with some interesting features and maybe an interesting flaw, at least out the box. The interesting feature is that it comes with this memory wire at the end of it, which basically just means that you can wrap this around your ear, and it's got a piece of metal in it that'll remember the form, the shape that you put it into. I think that's a nice little touch. The downside to having this memory wire is that this thing kind of tangles up a little bit, and having this hook at the end of your cable doesn't help with the tangliness. Down here at the end, you do have an L-shaped connector, which is not my favorite. I generally prefer just straight connectors, but it's not the worst thing in the world, of course. Oh, and then the other surprise is that these ear tips have an interesting shape to them. It's almost like a bullet style. I've kind of seen this style on some like aftermarket ear tips that I've seen for sale on the internet. It's interesting that these come with these out of the box. And the last thing to point out about the KSA is that it's got, I believe, a metal housing. It almost looks plastic, but the sound of it is metal, so I do think that that is a nice metal housing. That's a nice little touch. All right, let's move on to the ZS10, which I have a feeling it's gonna be essentially the same unboxing experience as the KSA is, just based on the packaging. The outside of the packaging, at least, looks exactly the same. All right, so we got the ZS10 unboxed, and as expected, it was basically the same as the ZSA. You got the same 3 ear tips with the same sort of bullet style to them. You got the same sick instruction set. You got basically the same cable. This one's a little bit different in that it appears to have a microphone and a button on it. It's probably like a pause play button if you connected this to a smartphone. I think that's a nice little touch. And I do think that is an option. I don't think that they all come with this. Just looking on the box, it looks like this one is marked as one that has a microphone. So I would expect that if you're buying this thing and you want to make sure you get the microphone, make sure that you find the one that specifies it comes with the microphone. Otherwise, it comes with essentially the same cable. I didn't have the same difficulty unwrapping this one. Maybe just whoever packaged this one was a little bit nicer to me, but it does still have the memory wire at the ends, and it does have the L-shaped terminal. All right, 2 down, 1 more to go. Let's check out the AS10. Look at that, it's got a little plaque. All right, so we got the AS10 unboxed, and despite the box looking pretty significantly different, what you get in the box is essentially the same as what we got in the other 2 headphones. Again, you get that sweet, sweet literature. Again, you get 3 sets of ear tips, which are, again, the bullet style. And then you get the earbuds themselves, and you get this same cable. You know, having now put together 3 different pairs of these KZ headphones, this connector style, I gotta be frank, I'm not a big fan of this. It feels like a thing that can go wrong. The pins on this kind of remind me of like an S-video cable, if you remember what that is. If you don't remember what an S-video cable is, well, must be nice to be young. All right, so there we have it. We have the KZ ZSAs, we've got the ZS10, and we've got the AS10. This is about a $30 headphone. This is about a $60, $50 headphone. This is about a $70 headphone, but I can't really tell the difference just here looking at them. In fact, these two, I'm gonna have a hard time telling apart. I guess the AS10s have like a black housing, whereas the ZS10 has got a clear housing. That apart, there's not gonna be much I can tell you about these headphones without giving them a pretty thorough listening test. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna listen to all 3 of these headphones, compare them back to back to back. It's gonna take me some time. It's gonna take me more than a day. So I'll come back and I'll let you know what I think about these different KZ headphones, and do I think that it's worth getting the $70 ones versus the $30 ones? Okay, so I've been listening to the 3 different pairs of KZ headphones, going back to back, really trying to figure out what are the differences between them, where are my preferences, and how can I help describe it for you guys. So I'll start with talking about things that are similar between all of these 3 KZ headphones. And the one element, the major element that's shared between all of them, is this cable. If I were to assess just the cable, I'd say, yeah, it's a pretty good cable. It's got a couple of issues with it though. All right, one, I do like the braided style and I like the color. I think it looks pretty nice. The 2 issues that I have with it, okay, one of them is a personal preference, and I know that there's gonna be some of you out there who disagree. I'm not a big fan of this memory wire up here at the top of the cable. I mean, it is nice for security when you put it on your ear, but really, most of the security of these headphones comes from the way that they fit inside the ear. They all fit pretty deep, and having that hook on there isn't contributing much in terms of security. So what I don't like about it is that having this rigid hook ends up making these headphones, or just the cable, a lot easier to tangle. It makes it a lot easier, or it makes it a lot more difficult to disentangle these things if the cable ends up getting wrapped around itself. And then one other aspect of the cable that I'm not a big fan of is this little Y connector right here. So this is, you know, in the center of the cable where the one cable splits into either left and right headphones. And this little connector, it's got a very rigid, sharp edge on it. And I don't mean sharp like it's gonna cut you. It's very soft rubber, so that's not an issue. It's just, because it's such a sharp, steep edge, it really gets caught on things pretty frequently. It'll get caught like on the back of my chair, stuff like that. So not a big fan of that. The cable, you know, it looks nice, it functions perfectly fine. It just has a couple of issues that mean that it's a little bit more of a hassle than really it has to be. And then the other physical aspect that these headphones all share together is these ear tips. And I never really talk about ear tips. They're all just usually kind of ear tips, but I actually really like these ear tips. In fact, I like them so much that I ended up putting these ear tips on some of my other in-ear monitors, and I like the way, not only the way that they fit, but also the way that they sound. And then the final similarity that I'll describe between these is, okay, they all sound actually pretty distinctly different, but generally they do all have, you know, more or less recessed mids and elevated bass. They have all got pretty good bass, pretty good thump to different degrees, and I'll describe that a little bit more in detail as I get into each headphone. But yeah, just as sort of a general idea of how these headphones sound, I would say that they all have recessed mids and good bass. All right, so starting with the KSAs, these are the cheapest KZs that I've got. You can get these on Amazon for about 26 bucks. So for 26 bucks, you get an all metal housed in-ear monitor that has a pretty good sound signature. This is not my favorite of the three, but for what it is, for 26 bucks, it's pretty good. I would describe the bass on these as, of the three, the weakest, but it's still really good bass. It's stronger bass than something like the Tin Audio T2s that I reviewed before. It's pretty good bass. It bloats a little bit into the lower mid-range, but it's not bad. And then the mids, especially at the upper mids, are recessed. And then the highs on these are, they're a little bit sibilant. You know, I think the highs on these are a little bit too elevated. It starts to feel almost like the audio is compressed a little bit on the high end. I can make it sound better with an EQ if I take the EQ and I just take like the uppermost range of the EQ and pull it down by about 3 decibels. It solves the sibilance problem and it makes this a really pleasant headphone. The other things that make this a really pleasant headphone is just the size and the shape of it. You know, it is the smallest bud of all the three I have here, and it fits in my ears really well. It's really comfortable to wear all day. I like the metal build. Yeah, there's a lot of really good things going for this. It's just not my favorite sound of the bunch, but for 26 bucks, holy moly, not bad. If I were to rate the KSA out of 5 stars, I'd give it 4 out of 5 stars. And really that lost star, that one star that it's missing, is just because of those sibilant highs. If you contain those highs with a little EQ change, these start to sound like 5 out of 5 headphones. Now, as for the ZS10, these sound pretty different from the KSAs. I think these sound closer to the AS10s than the ZSAs, but they still don't sound exactly the same as the AS10s. In fact, of the three, this is probably my least favorite headphone, but mostly it comes down to the way it fits. You know, both these and the AS10s have pretty large nozzles as they fit in your ear, or just the whole unit's pretty large. But the shape of this one in particular just doesn't really mash well with my ear. Maybe it's my ear, maybe it's everyone else's ear, but I think the shape of this thing, it just kind of starts to eject itself over time, kind of no matter which ear tips I use. In terms of sound, these have a less warm sound than the AS10s. If that's what you're into, you might prefer this. I think that the highs on these are slightly piercing. They're not terrible, they're not super piercing, but they're a little bit piercing, especially compared to the AS10s. The bass is not quite as strong as the AS10s, which is actually what you wouldn't expect, because these have a dynamic driver, which is known for being good for bass. The AS10s don't have any dynamic driver, but I still think that the AS10s do bass better. I think similar to the AS10s, these have very detailed sound. They feel, what's the word? Articulate? Is that a good word to describe these? They feel articulate, right? There's just a lot of really small details that come out when you're listening to these headphones. But yeah, just in terms of overall sound signature, I think that these favor like the upper mids and the highs. The mid-mids and the lower mids get recessed just like on all these headphones. And then the basses, it's there in pretty good amounts. If I were to rate the ZS10s out of 5 stars, I'd give them 4 out of 5. You know, the sound, I like it quite a bit. It's a little bit non-committal in that it doesn't really lean into one thing or the other. But it is it's a fairly good sounding headphone. Again, very articulate, and it's a fun listen. My only gripe with these really is the fit and the size. I think it's the size of the units themselves as they squeeze themselves out of my ears. It just makes it a thing that I'm constantly having to adjust, and for that reason, they're not my favorite. And then finally, we have the AS10s, which look almost exactly like the KS10s, I know. But these actually sound quite a bit different, and in my opinion, they sound quite a bit better. Now the sound signature on the AS10s is definitely a warm sound signature, which just means that like the mids are pretty recessed, the highs are pretty sparkly, but pretty tame also. And then it's really that lower bass that really comes through with this headphone. It makes it a really fun listen with certain music like Metallica. Holy, I've never really enjoyed Metallica as much as I have with this headphone. This is my first experience with balanced armature drivers, but I feel like they're just really articulate, very fast, sparkly without feeling fatiguing, good punch in the bass. It's just, it feels really sharp. In terms of fit, you know, this looks like it's exactly the same shape as the ZS10, but if you look closely, you can tell that they made some changes, and these fit in my ears much, much better. I don't really have any issues with my ears sort of force ejecting these while I listen to them. So I'm a big fan of the fit of these. They are still pretty big, right? They'll hang out the side of the ear a little bit, but I think they're pretty comfortable. One other big difference with the AS10s versus both the KZ ZS10 and the KZ KSA, Jesus, man, that's a lot of damn letters. But one other big difference between these and the other KZ headphones is that these are a lot more sensitive than those other headphones, right? If I'm listening to the ZS10s, I unplug and plug these in, these are about 10 steps of volume louder than the ZS10s. So that extra sensitivity, it gives you extra volume if that's what you're into. It also does on my Walkman give me just a slight amount of hiss, just a slight amount, and I don't know, you know, that's the first time I've discovered that with my Walkman. Maybe that's an issue with the Walkman, maybe that's an issue with all music players. I don't really know. I can just say that this is a very sensitive IEM, and it will get loud if you want it to. There's actually one thing I forgot to mention about the ZS10s that's also true of the AS10, so I'll call it out now. The nozzles that the ear tips fit onto, I don't think they have a very good way of securing the ear tip on there, right? Like most IEM nozzles have a little ridge that will hold the ear tip on. These have very small little bumps that are meant to hold the ear tips on, but they're not super secure. And there was one time that I pulled the AS10s out of my ear and the ear tip did not come with them. That was not a fun experience. So thankfully I haven't had it happen since then. I'm just kind of being careful every time I remove these from my ear to make sure that I don't lose another ear tip in my ear. I don't have room for a lot of spare ear tips in there. If I were to rate the AS10s out of 5 stars, I'd give these babies 5 stars. I think, you know, they are the most expensive of the 3 here. These cost about 70 bucks on Amazon right now, but I really like the way they sound. Comfort is pretty good for these. Again, no issues with fit. I can listen to these all day, and they make certain music that I have, again, like Metallica, they make certain music just really come alive in a way that no other pair of headphones that I have does. So for me, the AS10s, this is a 5-star out of 5. If you're interested in checking out any of these KZ headphones on Amazon, of course, I've got links in the description down below. While you're down there, you might as well hit the like button if you like the video. You can subscribe to the channel, and then I'll see you on the next super review.